Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. Well, this evening we begin a month-long series on financial literacy. You all see what's happening in the economy in terms of inflation and cost of living, and so many Bahamians are meeting it very, very hard to make ends meet. Many, of course, I spoke earlier this week with a citizen and community leader in Grand Bahama who say that in Grand Bahama there are many working poor. Well, there are many people who are underemployed, those who would obviously desire to make more money, and those obviously who want to have that kind of extra cash flow to invest. But first, we begin with just the basics. Savings. What are your savings habits? What are the habits that you have that you stand by regardless of what's happening in the economy, even if you have to perhaps revisit the amount you save weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever your schedule is? What are your habits? How do you deal with money? How are you financially literate? Well, did you know this? Italy has a reputation for being the country or one of the world's leading countries where the citizens have the biggest and most healthiest savings. We're going to find out how that became, how that is, how they're doing now in 2024 when everybody is talking about the cost of living. And also we're going to obviously share some tips with you. I'm happy this evening to welcome to this segment in our, again, this month-long series on financial literacy. Here in studio with me is Marquista Thompson. Marquista is a banker by profession, a financial analyst. He helps in the nation people with a number of just wonderful things, bringing it together as it relates to financial services. He's also the president of a Future Ready Concierge Financial Services company, where he kind of just helps people take the stress out of doing business or getting business started. And so he's here to give us some obviously expert opinion. And joining me from Italy at this time of the night or morning is Andrea Cecchi. Andrea, too, is a banker. He is the honorary consul for Italy to the Bahamas. He also calls the Bahamas home about 6 months out of the year. So he certainly knows our habits. He knows this nation very, very well, particularly the island of Eleuthera. What he does now, though, is spend considerable time throughout Italy and Europe helping people manage their finances and, more importantly, invest. So we're going to cover all of this month. It's going to be really, really awesome. But starting right at the foundation of it all, savings. You've heard the central bank talk about Bahamians and our savings habits, and the fact that perhaps it's almost non-existent, Makista. Andrea, I want to start with you. Welcome to the show. It's good to see you. Good evening to you. Please, let us just jump in by, first of all, talking about Italy and its savings habits. It has a reputation, a good one, for really being a nation that takes savings very, very seriously.
Thank you, Shanique, for inviting me to your show. I'm very honored to be able to talk to your audience I have to tell you, Shanique, you chose the really perfect timing to start this series, financial education, because what's happening in the world now is something extremely important, and is like we're going through some colossal changes, the monetary economic paradigm. So people should start really seriously taking into consideration understanding money, understanding the dynamics of money and all that comes with it. So I think it's really appropriate to start this conversation, to use the name of one of your favorite shows, about money. And it's really appropriate to do it now. And let's hope we share some light on some important topics about money. Yeah, it's true that, I call the Bahamas my second home. I've been coming to the Bahamas since 1995. I've seen it grow. I've seen it develop. I've seen it change. I've seen the massive developments, the incredible growth that has benefited the country, lifting it up from a minor player in the Caribbean to maybe the major player in the kind of tourist tropical destination. So we really have to, give us a nice pat on the shoulder and congratulate, because it took a lot of hard work and the Bahamians showed that they were up to it. So,
Yeah.
but now, we shouldn't really, sit down and rejoice, because the biggest challenges, as always, they're always ahead of us. What do you think, Shanique?
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and it's important. And the reason I thought this was so important, and Andrea, thank you for your expertise and what you're doing around Europe. I want Bahamians to be aware of that, because not only are you here in the Bahamas half the year, but you work steadily to ensure that people are aware of what's going on. And the reason I say that Makista and Andrea is because when I spoke recently last week with a minister, a cabinet minister, about this series. She thought it was so important because this is something she wants to do in her constituency as well, talk about financial literacy. And Andre, I talked about the savings habits of Italians. We'll get to that in a second, but Makista, it's good to have you here for the first time on Beyond the Headlines. You, of course, are just like Andrea, history in banking, financial services, also assisting people in businesses and getting major deals, pulling together, etc., taking the headache out of it. But how do you explain, Makista, the fact that in the Bahamas we have all this going on, with tourism being such continues to be a great industry that fuels this economy, but Bahamians are not saving?
That's a who's the question for?
Well, I'll ask Makista first and then come back to you.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, no, that's fine.
Thank you, Shanique. Thank you for the opportunity. Certainly, I think, it's quite a puzzling thing why when we have such a vibrant tourism economy. I mean, we see the increase in the amount of tourists that are visiting, and of course, by extension, that's an economic benefit for us. Mm-hmm. And we're not seeing the extension of that to our family financial situations, the dynamics, mm-hmm. right? So people aren't properly putting aside, people aren't properly strategically positioning themselves for a better placement in terms of their financial position, mm-hmm. And that's because of lack of education, yes. right? So people yes. don't understand what the importance is of putting aside $1 today for tomorrow. We're a culture where we're used to expensing, we're used to spending.
I was about to ask you, do Bahamians even think it's important to put away $1 today for tomorrow?
Yeah, and let me tell you, so I've had some experience and exposure during travels, and I've traveled in my short lifetime extensively to several different countries, several different continents, and had the opportunity to see the conditions under which other people in other nations live, right? And they too, within their own circumstances, within their own dynamics, they find the need, or they find the importance of actually putting aside, putting away and saving, whether it be for their children's education, whether it be for their own sustenance, whether it be for just future development, all right? I think as a country and as a nation, we've not placed the same level of importance on saving and preparing ourselves financially, and by default, we end up finding ourselves in situations where we retire. We retire from the public service, we retire from private institutions, and we've not positioned ourselves to financially sustain ourselves past the retirement age. So I think to your question, do Bahamians find it necessary or important to save, to financially set themselves up? I think I would find my response to that initially would be I think we're challenged in that area.
And it's really troubling to hear, and I want to commend, I wouldn't call her out at this moment, but I want to commend the government minister who say, Shanique, that is such an urgent topic. I commend you on it, and please do make it happen. But she's also going to introduce it to her constituency. Andrea,
Awesome.
I wanted you to talk very briefly about how is it that Italians gained the reputation of being the nation, or perhaps one of few nations in the world known for its savings, its having savings.
Well, Shanique, Italy is an old country. We've been around. I mean, we've been around since time immemorial. So the wealth in Italy has been built throughout the generations, by like passed on from family to family. But what makes Italians really such a great savers is that they conduct a frugal life. They spend money only when they have it. Hardly ever there was a culture of debt for consumption. Only recently it's been picking up through like a lot of hype. It's been hyped a lot, like these unnecessary things that are pushed on you, like you just swipe your credit card and get into debt for useless things. But this is still a country that has this tradition of being frugal. That means families pull together. People look for the best prices. People just spend money when they have it. They don't really like to show off if it's not necessary. And it's a tradition, is in the culture. So these things, is not something that you learn in the books. It just comes with the family habits.
It's sort of what families teach each other from generations.
Yes,
well, I want to
and
ask you something, Andrea. In the Bahamas, the central bank has said the main sort of average savings for those who even are thinking along those lines is about $300. At one point it was $1,000, but it's about $300. Now I know we're talking dollars and euros. However, what is the average savings, would you say, when you were in banking, that you were able to estimate, and what is known in Italy of the average Italian?
Well, the overall Italian assets is 5 trillion euros, which is over $5,000 million. So that's the wealth that is in the Italian families. Since you're talking about a whole lot of wealth, it's a very rich nation.
A whole lot, I think, in
a whole lot of wealth. It's 5 trillion in the Italians have in assets. It's not just savings in the bank. It includes real estate.
So they also see the value of assets as well.
Yes. So Bahamians, as I know, they all most Bahamians, they own their own home. So that should be considered an asset.
That's Literate where you live, Andrea. I mean, where you like to be. That's Literate where you visit for several months at a time.
I was just considering it overall. But then average, I've worked in the bank for 32 years. I've traveled from north to south. Average, I would say, like cash on an account, at least 10,000.
10,000 euros.
Minimum, yes.
Which we know that's perhaps
like
more than $15,000.
No, 11,000 at the exchange now. Yeah.
Or the exchange rate. Okay, so but $11,000 that they have saving, and so
like minimum. The rest, like if people have a little more than that, they tend to invest it, and then we open another door into like the possibility of investing, which is not really the purpose of this show, because we are not here to give financial advice, but we just here to let people understand basically what are some useful tips on how to save, on how to.
Well, I'm happy that you moved into that area, Andrea, and that you mentioned it, because tonight's show is about, number one, talking about the savings habits, and then from both of you who are bankers, who are still in the industry, in the field, and do various things in the industry in Europe, here in the Bahamas, and elsewhere. Let's kind of shift into that then. Let's start talking about tips. Marquise to say, put away $1 today so you can have $1 tomorrow. Well, how do you structure savings? How do you get in that mindset? And truly, what should be the schedule of you putting away, I don't know, $50, $100, whatever it is, and how often?
Well, Shanika, first of all, let's start, if you allow me, to understand what money is, because we're talking about some kind of entity, money, then nobody ever really explains to people what money is. And Shanika, if you have to define money, how would you define money? Would you know?
Sort of an exchange for something that you hold that is quite valuable in terms of being able to go and exchange it for a service, for a product, etc. And you can use it to work for you. It certainly can bring about a lot of relief and pleasure. And yeah.
That's one of the properties of money. But money is not just that. Money is most of all is energy. It's what you are being rewarded for your labor. So if you save it and you don't spend it, that energy is it keeps building up. You can deploy it into a more in a more powerful way in the future. So, but that requires a sacrifice. What is the sacrifice? You deprive yourself of consumption today, of a pleasure of today,
Yes.
to hope for a better future, like to hope to be using that energy that you've saved in terms
Well,
of
I
money.
like that, Andrea. I like that. I hope you all heard that one tip, because I'm going to ask Marquista for a tip. Listen, you guys know the segments go. I'll tell you this next week. I need you all to speak like in little sound bites, because this segment goes by very quickly. But Andrea said one tip right there: deny yourself today, sacrifice. Marquista, what tip would you give?
Sure thing, and I'm glad that Andrea actually started with what is money, and then he ended with opportunity cost, right? I think for me, when I talk about or provide a tip as it relates to savings and finances, I think before the precursor to that is understanding what our expenses are. So before we can understand what we can save, we need to understand what we're spending. All right, and I think what we need to do is start small. Let's look at some of the expenses that we have. The utility bills. What are we getting from a cable company in terms of channels that we don't use?
That's so true, that we don't need.
And we don't need.
Right, but that's right there, denying yourself.
Absolutely.
Why
So how do we reevaluate?
Why would you have to pay? Anyway, go ahead.
Sorry. So how do we reevaluate what our current needs are as it relates to that service? A cell phone service. How do we make the adjustment on what it is that we need on a cell phone service? How do we
get a plan? Because, for example, for the phone companies like Alive, they have plans from this big to as large as you would want it.
Absolutely, absolutely, right. And then we go on from there to, and I'm sure we're going to expound on this a little bit when as the series continues. But certainly, even as we reevaluate our current loan situation, we talk about Andrea and I being bankers. When we look at our loan situation, how do we amalgamate? How do we consolidate what we have so that we lower the expenses that we're spending on a monthly basis? And that sum that we're saving is the sum that we actually place into a credit union, into a savings account at a bank. That's the genesis of what our savings habits become or can become. All right? So it's cutting back from our expenses and making that our savings.
Gentlemen, I love where this is going. Again, I hope to simplify it as best as possible so that you are armed and equipped. This is necessary for all of us, not just the wealthy or those who you figure making 6 figures and they should listen. No. You, with your meager salary at this moment, or perhaps a salary that is so sort of split all over the place, you've got to pay attention to this. So I hope you were able to take some notes. Andrea and Marquista, I promise to give this segment hopefully a bit more time, that Justin would allow me a bit more time next week, so that we can really get into some more. And we'll pick right up with savings, because I know they have more tips to share. That's very, very important. Again, this is the first in a series all month on Friday evenings on financial literacy. Guys, plan to tune in next week to get some more information. needed information. I thank you very much, Marquista Thompson. Of course, Marquista is from Future Ready Concierge Services. Andrea Cecchi is the honorary consul to the Bahamas from Italy. He also is a banker. He goes about Italy and Europe teaching financial literacy and investing. We'll get into that much later. And also, of course, a friend of the Bahamas. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in all week long. We enjoyed having you here, and we look forward to seeing you right back here on Monday evening. For the entire Beyond the Headlines team, I'm Shanique Miller. Make it a great weekend, everyone.
The Verizon Media Group, home of ILTV, Paramount Systems Limited, Eyewitness News, and Beyond the Headlines.